Good morning. I think it's still morning. So, little history. I bought myself a Williams 6060, the bullet-nosed Betty. So this is a CN engine. It's not my usual purchases. It's actually 027 scale. It's a really nice die-cast engine. The engine's die-cast with some nice little detail on the top there. The bell inside the depression there, I guess, to reduce the wind, reduce the drag. So this was, I guess, CN's attempt at streamlining the engines, and it's certainly quite an engine. And it's a 484 Berkshire. At least that's what it was. And there's the tender that goes along with it. So this thing is strictly, like I say, 027 gauge, and it's transformer controlled. It's quite heavy. The engine's quite heavy. And the history that I have with the 6060 goes back to my grandfather, who started working on the trains when he was probably 15 to 17 as an apprentice out of Toronto area. I think Ajax or another place out there along the line. He was a carpenter. He worked building the coaches for one of the early railroads, and then it became amalgamated with CN, and I'm not sure whether he worked continuously on the coaches, but eventually he worked his way into the engine. He worked in the end, he worked as a conductor. So I am sure that he worked his way through fireman and engineer. And his oldest son, Art, who was also an engineer in the end when I knew him, he's my mother's brother. I'm 80 now, so that goes back a few years. He was running engines before I was born in the 20s and 30s. And I know from historical conversations that he did run the 6060 out of Toronto. So that's why I have this little 6060 027 gauge die-cast locomotive on my layout now in memory of him. He used to model in F gauge, which was American Flyer at the time. I think he modeled that in that. I don't know if he modeled. I know he bought some of the engines. My aunt had them in the end, and she thought they were worth a lot of money until she took them to a dealer, and he told her they were not worth what she thought they were worth. I ended up with one a long time ago, and it was pretty much dilapidated, and I never did get to run it because it was F gauge, and I didn't model in that, so I never ran it, never had it to any length. I never really appreciated it. I'm sorry, Uncle Art. But it wasn't until I actually got into steam locomotives myself, and I probably would have appreciated it more now. But anyway, this is a little engine. It's transformer controlled. It runs a little rough, but it still runs. So we'll start it up and see if we can get it to go. There we go. Come on, you can do it. I added the lights to the tender and the little light in the cab there, if you can see it. I like to customize some of my own engines, I guess, a little bit. This thing runs great downhill, you'll see. I have to modify the speed coming down the back hill here, because it'll really rip. I don't have many CN cars. It never was my railroad, I guess. Too bad my uncle didn't work on the CP. Because I got lots of CP stuff. But we're going to keep the speed down going down the back hill here. Right up. So, in there's a little light, and I put little lights in the back. Painted them red. Put a little light inside the tender too. At the back, you can't see it. There's not enough power on a track for it to really glow white, but occasionally you'll get a glimpse of it. Probably not now. Not too fast. But there wasn't enough detail on it made by Williams to, you know, satisfy me after running some of the engines that I have from Lionel. They have a lot of added features. But it's not too hard to mess around with the engines a little bit and customize them, with lighting and that sort of stuff. Just have to take it apart, take the covers off, and see what you can do. There's also within the tender, there is a forward. Funny these. Okay, within the tender, there's a bell and a whistle. And I don't know how to make them work. I think there's some sort of, my transformer, of course, doesn't have that. Bell and a button for the whistle. Inside the locomotive itself, there's a little printed circuit board in there with terminals on it and pins sticking up. And while I was testing it the other day, I had the cab off, the body off, and I was looking for something that would give me voltage for lighting, and eventually found it through the smoke, power to the smoke, which is 8 volts. That's how I run the cab light. But I inadvertently shorted out 2 of these terminals, and with the tender, the whistle went, and I went, oh, what's that, you know? And then I shorted out the other 2 terminals on the printed circuit board, or the pins on the circuit board, and the whistle went. And I thought, wow, how am I ever going to do that by remote control? And they said somewhere in the Williams printed information that I got, it said something about the fact that you have 2 buttons on your transformer, which I don't have, and it will send a DC signal through the track. Positive one way will give you the whistle, and positive the opposite way will give you the bell. So anyway, I don't have that. There are little buttons that you can buy. I'm sure K-Line used to have them, and Lionel used to have them in the beginning when they were running just conventional. And I guess somebody has them out there. I'll have to look around and see one and pick up one up at a train fair or something, and possibly install it on my track and see if that helps. But anyway, a pretty cool little whistle, but I could never figure out how to do it on my layout yet. I will get it eventually. But anyway, that's the history of the 6060 in relation to my mother and her brothers and my grandfather, who raised me from very young until I was 3 years old, and then they came out to live with us, and I was 4 and 5 when they stayed with us in our first house. And he was a big influence on my life. I guess that's the history of the DNA that ended up in my brain about railroads. And I'm sure that is where it came from. I remember going to see a film, and I felt a film at the, I don't know which film it was, but anyway, my wife took me to it. I could feel his presence. Anyway, I just thought I'd give you a little history on my heritage in the railroad, grandfather and his son Art. His other son, Ernest, was a fireman, and Uncle Ernie, I saw a lot more of him because he lived in Ottawa, whereas Uncle Art lived in Toronto, and I live in Ottawa. So I only saw Uncle Art 4 or 5 times in the time that... But anyway, that's the history of the Canadian National Railroad in my family history. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed my little 027 gauge 6060. Take care now. Bye.